What up, YouTube? Now, just going through a little adjustment on your valves on the Ltr450. Customer said that he was having to hit the gas to start the bike, and his FI light was coming on after it ran, but the intake turned out to be too tight. I'm talking about like zero clearance. So I got wrote down up here, so the exhaust is supposed to be between, I think the spec is like 0.30 millimeters and 40, and the intake is 0.20 millimeters to 0.30 millimeters. That's the spec. The intake is 0, and the exhaust, as you can see, is tight about, was it 0.10 millimeters or something. I got a hot cam shim kit and everything, but what I wanted to show y'all is a little technique that I've learned. Just zip tie your cam chain to your cams. You only have to move your cams just slightly out of the way just to get to the shims. That's assuming that your timing and everything is correct. So I did check the timing, have the inspection hole taken off. That line lines up perfect with that arrow. I just did it by taking that cover off and turning it over until it hits. It's just a pain with these LTRs because you got to take the fuel pump off. It's in the way, so you can get to the tensioner that's hiding up in there. What I like to do is I like to take the tensioner apart, leave it apart till I get everything set up. But once you readjust this end, you can actually install it back into the motor. Just don't install the spring with the nut on the end, otherwise that'll put tension in it. So you don't need to have tension back on the cam chain to get your readings. You kind of like do a dry reading. So after you get the proper shims in, if you want to check everything over, you just install your shims, install your cams back, get something to slightly depress the bucket down. You know, nothing hard, just push it down a little bit. Like take some electrical tape over a screwdriver handle, just push it down, don't damage it. And that way everything is seat in place. You don't have to rotate the motor over to get the seat. Do that, then take your, put your cam caps back on. Then take your measurement, see if you are within spec. If you are, you can go ahead and button everything up. But I'll give you all a little video of what I'm talking about once I get there. All right. Oh yeah, you can also take a Sharpie. Just mark 2 markings on each cam and the chain, just in case the zip ties fail or you kind of lose position of what you were doing. Like you got to come back another day or something. So you just have 2 references. All right. In case you guys didn't get what I was talking about, this is how it was installed into the motor. This plunger right here is your adjuster. This is the spring. This is the end cap. So when it's inside the motor, the spring is loaded in here. This cap is on there and it's tightened down. Once it's tightened down, it'll start depressing on the plunger in there, pushing this out, making this an automatic adjuster. So when it needs adjustment, this spring pushes it in and bam. So what you do is, when you take it out, you depress this right here, this little mechanism right there, and see how it just drops down? Now it's reset. Now you can load this back into the bike. Just don't install this spring and this cap. Otherwise, as soon as you start installing this spring, and let's just say I got the cap on, can't do it with one hand. Let's just say I got the cap on and I'm trying to tighten it up. What's gonna happen, you hear it clicking. As I start applying pressure, pushes out. That's what adjusts your cam chain. So, I'm gonna leave that out. I'm gonna depress this. expected it to fall back down. It has fell all the way down. Yes. Alba does make a bigger end for this, just in case you get premature wear. For some reason, the Suzuki quads put too much pressure on their tensioners and prematurely stretches the factory chain. The fix is either get a manual tensioner, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can do more damage. I would just suggest replacing your stock cam chain once it gets slacked up into a heavy duty one. That's all. That's what I was talking about the secondary marks. I just put my Sharpie mark right there and right there, and I did the same thing on the intake. You just can't see. Just in case my zip tie fails or something happens, I can have a secondary mark. As long as the motor doesn't spin over, those marks will stay the same. The gasket looks good, so I can go ahead and reinstall the cam chain tensioner back in. I'm going to bolt it back down. That way, that's out of the way. I'm going to leave the fuel pump off, of course, because I can't get that. Bolt back in. I want to clean it up some, try and not get too much dirt inside my top end. Make sure everything is functioning. Make sure the choke mechanism is functioning right, even though the choke is broken. Just make sure it's functioning correct. I'm gonna have to replace it. I think I got an extra one for mine. And yeah, we'll come back and I'll let you guys see when the cams are off, how you make the adjustment. So to do this job, like I said, you're going to need some good filler gauges. Micrometer, 0 to 25 millimeters. That's just to see what size your shims are inside the bike, because sometimes the older shim doesn't have any numbers, they rub off. And you always want to check the shims you're installing, because just because you have a number on there, they could be wore off. It could be an older shim in here, they got wore down. Typically they don't, but you want to make sure everything is measured. Otherwise you'll be chasing your tail if something is off. So I'll come back to you in a minute. So I got them on the bench just sitting there waiting. The cool thing that Suzuki does is they take your cam detainer. Everybody usually has a little space in the actual cam bearing where they sit. Well, Suzuki puts them up under here on the Ltr, and they reside right there. Now you see how I just took that cam off and rolled it forward, and I just got it sitting right on top of the exhaust, and guess what? Nothing's going anywhere because they're zip tied. So now I have easy access to the bucket, so I can put this back in place with hardly no effort. Don't have to worry about it jumping time or losing my time or anything like that, because that's all I'm doing. So, good tip. Hope you guys like that too. And yeah, what I usually do is, some people want to go all the way out for this, maybe not, but the magnet, built-in magnet, will pop that right on out. Usually, oh yeah, see, the shim comes right out with it. Now just make sure that I keep up which side it came off of. I'm gonna mix them up. The next one, pop it right on off. Shim came out with it. Alright. So I'm not going to go into detail of how you figure out which shims you need. There's some math involved, or Suzuki makes a guide. I think Yamaha has the same guide in their manuals too, that you can just start on a y-axis and an x-axis with your two figures and meet up in the middle, and it'll calculate your next shim that you need. Whatever, you're not gonna do the math. But since mine measured 0, I gotta start from scratch. So yeah, once I thought this was somebody already had shimmed up, and you can't see what that one is. It won't focus, but it is it does say 2.10 on that one. So y'all noted where they're at, noted which buckets go where, so I won't lose track of that. And since those was 0, I'm gonna have to do a couple different trials and errors. So what I normally would go with, it's gonna tell me, as far as once I do my math, it's gonna tell me to put a smaller shim in. Probably for this 215, I'm gonna be down to probably 195, but I'm actually gonna go to 185 just so I can get a reading. Run the 195 is probably not gonna put me in a ballpark. So 195 on this one, and I'm probably gonna go, I'm probably go 285 on this one, and a 190 on this one, just to get me a ballpark figure. But I'll give y'all the this is the formula right here. It's A equals B minus C equals, B minus C plus D. So B is gonna be the measurement you took. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get this right. No. Hold up. Let me go back to my wall. Sorry about that. I always got it written down on my wall just in case. So, yes, I was right. So my wall says B is going to be the measurement you took. C is going to be the spec it's supposed to be. So you're going to take the measurement you took minus the spec, which is going to give you a negative number, of course. And then you're going to add the shim that you took out. So the shim that you took out, you're going to add it to it, and then it's going to give you your new shim number. So yeah, once you do this, you're going to have a negative number. Make sure you put your decimal points in the right place. So even with the shim, you're not going to put the spec, because the spec is going to be like like up there, the spec for Ltr450 is 0.10, but your shim might be like 2.40. So make sure you got the decimal points in the right place, even if you're doing it on the calculator. I would suggest doing it on the calculator. So I didn't get lucky with the exhaust because they don't have any numbers on them. Somebody put them on, can't pick it up. Somebody put them on wrong, so kind of wore the numbers off. I put them on upside down, but the camera won't focus. But that's okay, because that's what I had my micrometer for. So both of the shims that came out measured at 2.40. Both of my measurements were the same, so I only had to do one calculation to get both sides. And if you haven't guessed it by now, only thing I had to do was just drop that 0.4 to a 2.3. All right. So I went from 2.40 millimeters to 2.30 millimeters, because the spec, I mean, we ain't really got to put that 3 in there, but the spec is supposed to be 0.30 and I'm at 0.20, so it was 10 millimeters tighter. So if it's 10 millimeters tighter, that means you got to drop down 0.10 millimeters on the shim, and bam, now you're back in spec. So I installed these on the exhaust side. The exhaust side should fall within spec. when I told you I was gonna do 185 on this side and 190 on this side. What I wind up doing, because I didn't have any 190 shims, I put the 180 on this side, and it actually perfect. You know, put me right in the ballpark figures where I needed to be. This side, on the other hand, I gotta go smaller, so I'm probably gonna drop down to a 175.